But everything, remember this, everything rises and falls on leadership. By the way, where I learned this, when I lived in San Diego, California, I had a fellow by the name of Don Stevenson who was my mentor. And he was the president of Global Hospitality, and that Global Hospitality literally would buy, they would buy resorts that were going bankrupt. Resorts like La Costa, Greenleaf, any kind of major resort across America that was going under financially. What we found was that this company, Global Hospitality, they would come in and they would buy the company. Okay, now get the picture. Here we are. I'm sitting out with Don Stevenson about every other month. He's mentoring me. And I asked him one day, I said, Don, when you go buy a bankrupt company, a resort that's going under, are there some things that you always do? And I'll never forget. He looked at me and said, John, he said, yes, there is. He said, when we go into a bankrupt company, he said, there are two things we always do. And I looked at him and said, two things? He said, yes, absolutely. He said, the two things we always do is, he said, first of all, we train all the people that are in the service business, the employees. In other words, the guys that are out there when the cars pulled up and they're unloading the luggage. He said, we train them all in relational skills. In other words, we train them, we talk to them about how to remember names, how to get along with people. And he said, the reason we do that, the waiters, the waitresses, the people behind the checkout counter, on the grounds. And he said, what we found is 90% of the people who do not return to the resort after their first visit had a bad experience with the employees of the organization. They weren't treated with great respect, or they weren't taken care of well. And so he said, what we do is we would go through and we train all the people. Now what I'm doing, I'm sitting there and I'm taking notes, and so I'm writing down to me, make sure that you've trained all the people in your organization. Okay. He said, the second thing we do is, he said, every time we take over a bankrupt company, he said, we fire the president. And I don't write that one down. And I look at him and say, what do you mean you fire the president? He said, John, he said, every time we take over companies going under, he said, we fire the president. I said, well, that seems a little harsh, isn't it? I mean, don't you first go see him? You know what I mean? Go sit in the office, light a fire in the fireplace, hold hands, do a little kumbaya, you know what I'm talking about? No. He said, John, he said, we fire the president. And I'm pressing him a little bit more, and I can remember, because he was eating the salad. He was just looking down, eating the salad, talking to me. And he stops, puts his fork down. Now he's looking at me. He's a little bit ticked that I'm not catching this, And he's looking at me. He said, John, listen to me. He said, if the president were any good, the company wouldn't be going bankrupt. The first thing we do is fire the president. I remember finally saying, okay, fire the president. You know what he was teaching me that day? He was teaching me the law of the lid. What he was really saying to me is that it's an absolute fact that in any organization, everything rises and falls on leadership. And the leadership of that organization will determine the size of that organization. And so therefore, when you have a good company that's thriving and doing great business and excelling, you've got good leadership. And when you've got a company that's stagnant and it's going downhill and it's not going well, I can promise you, you have bad leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership.